the whole thirst for power and resources
Right.
has directly contributed to the displacement of millions of people.
Millions.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
Create the conditions that force people to leave their home. Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we're diving deep into migration. It's always in the news, right?
Always.
But it's rarely understood.
Yeah.
We're going to go way beyond the headlines about border crises and all that.
Okay.
And uncover what's really driving global migration.
I like it.
You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, remember that mission accomplished banner on that aircraft carrier?
Oh, yeah.
During the Iraq War?
Yeah.
Like back then we all bought the whole liberation narrative.
Right.
But looking back now,
Yeah.
knowing what we know about WMDs and the rise of sectarian violence,
Right.
it feels like
Yeah.
we were sold a bill of goods.
It's fascinating how migration is always framed as a problem
Right.
to be solved, instead of as a symptom of much larger global issues.
Okay, I like that.
It's like focusing on the cough,
Yeah.
but ignoring the pneumonia.
Okay, yeah. So in this deep dive,
Yeah.
we're going to explore how U.S. and Western foreign policy, often driven by the whole thirst for power and resources,
Right.
has directly contributed to the displacement of millions of people
Millions.
worldwide.
Yeah.
It's about connecting those dots
Yeah.
between all these seemingly disparate events, like wars, economic policies, climate change,
Right.
and understanding how they all come together
Yeah.
to create the conditions that force people to leave their homes.
Exactly. And to really get this,
Yeah.
we need to unpack a concept that's often used,
Okay.
but rarely defined humanitarian intervention.
Okay.
It's often presented as this benevolent act.
Right.
But if we look back historically,
Yeah.
it's clear that it's been used to justify a lot of interventions that serve strategic interests,
Okay.
sometimes at the expense of local populations.
So you're saying it's not always as altruistic as
Yeah.
it's made out to be?
Take the Middle East, for example.
Okay.
The narrative is usually promoting democracy, fighting terrorism. But if you dig a little deeper,
Okay.
you see this pattern
Yeah.
of securing resources, especially oil.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Okay.
How does the pursuit of oil shape U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East?
Well, the U.S. and its allies have a long history there.
Wow.
Remember back in 1953?
Yeah.
The CIA orchestrated a coup in Iran
Oh, wow.
to overthrow a democratically elected prime minister who wanted to nationalize the country's oil.
Wow.
The Shah,
Yeah.
who they installed,
Right.
was friendly to Western oil interests.
Interesting.
Fast forward to 2003,
The invasion of Iraq.
the invasion of Iraq.
Wait, so you're saying that the Iraq War, which was supposed to be about terrorism,
Yeah.
was actually about oil?
It was definitely a major factor.
Oh.
Remember the Bush administration
Yeah.
claimed that Saddam Hussein had WMDs
Yeah.
and ties to al-Qaeda,
Right.
but that all turned out to be false.
Right.
But what did Iraq
A
have?
lot of oil.
Oil. And who benefited from the chaos after the invasion?
Yeah.
Western oil companies.
Wow.
They got access to Iraq's massive oil reserves.
So it's like
Yeah.
we took this sledgehammer
Yeah.
to this really delicate situation,
Right.
and we're still seeing the fallout today.
Absolutely.
Millions of Iraqis displaced. Millions. Yeah, and it's not just Iraq.
Right.
This pattern keeps happening. Afghanistan, Syria.
Okay.
Decades of U.S. involvement in Afghanistan,
Right.
first during the Cold War,
Yeah.
and then the war on terror,
Right.
left the country devastated by conflict.
Yeah.
And when the U.S. pulled out in 2021,
Right.
it created a power vacuum,
Yeah.
and that destabilized the whole region.
And then we saw those images of
Yeah.
Afghans desperately trying to flee,
Yeah.
clinging to planes.
Anything to get out.
Yeah.
And in Syria,
Yeah.
the civil war that started in 2011 became a proxy conflict.
Okay.
Global powers,
Right.
including the U.S.,
Yeah.
all pursuing their own agendas.
Wow.
The Syrian people were caught in the middle,
Yeah.
facing violence and displacement.
It's easy to get lost
Yeah.
in all the geopolitics, but we can't forget that behind every migration statistic
Right.
is a person,
Yeah.
a human story,
A life disrupted?
a family torn apart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not always bombs and bullets
Right?
that drive people from their homes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's much quieter,
Mm-hmm.
but equally devastating.
Okay.
Economic sanctions.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because sanctions are often presented
Right.
as this peaceful alternative to war,
Right.
a way to kind of exert pressure
Right.
without resorting to military action.
Yeah.
But are they really that clean?
Well, the reality is that sanctions can cripple entire economies,
Wow.
pushing people into poverty and desperation. It's like using a scalpel when you need a Band-Aid.
Okay.
They might seem precise,
Yeah.
but the reality is...
They often hurt everyday people the most.
Yeah.
People just trying to survive.
Right.
It's a brutal side effect that we rarely acknowledge.
I remember seeing those images from Venezuela
Yeah.
a few years ago. People struggling to get food,
Right.
medicine, basic necessities.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people,
Yeah.
myself included, didn't really understand the role that sanctions played in that.
Venezuela's economy was already struggling,
Right.
but the sanctions imposed by the U.S. and others aimed at pressuring the government ended up having devastating consequences for everyday Venezuelans.
Right.
They made things worse, leading to hyperinflation, food shortages, a collapse of basic services.
So essentially, millions were left with no choice but to flee.
Exactly.
To try to find a better life somewhere else.
Yeah.
So how did those sanctions actually work?
Okay.
Like, what did they do?
Yeah.
And how did they lead to such dire consequences?
The U.S. imposed sanctions
okay.
on Venezuela's oil exports, which was their main source of income.
Right.
They froze government assets abroad.
Wow.
And they blocked U.S. companies from doing business with them.
Okay.
This had a domino effect, leading to shortages of everything.
Wow.
From food and medicine
to
basic goods like toilet paper.
I'm starting to see how these seemingly clean foreign policy tools can have such unintended consequences.
Exactly. And it's not just the immediate impact. Sanctions can have long-term effects, too, hindering a country's ability to recover. They can also create resentment, instability, which can lead to more conflict and displacement. And this brings us to another big driver of migration. Climate change. The industrialized nations, the biggest contributors to carbon emissions, they often deflect responsibility for the consequences of a warming planet.
It's like we're living in a world of climate consequences. But some are still arguing if it's even real.
It's mind-boggling. We see this playing out Central America, Africa, South Asia, where farmers are having trouble growing crops because of droughts, floods, extreme weather. These climate disasters are forcing people to leave their homes.
It's almost like they're being punished for a problem they didn't create.
Exactly. Imagine you're a farmer in Honduras. Your land used to be fertile. Now it's barren because of drought.
Wow.
You can't feed your family. Gangs are everywhere. After all that U.S. intervention, what do?
It's a terrible choice. Stay and risk your family's safety or leave and go on this dangerous journey north.
Hoping for a better life. And that journey is so dangerous. We hear stories. Families separated, kids detained, people exploited and abused.
It's really a testament to their resilience.
It is.
That they keep going, despite all that.
It's easy to get caught up in the statistics, policy debates. But when you hear those personal stories, it really hits home. These aren't just numbers. These are real people with dreams and hopes and fears.
Just like us.
Absolutely. We tend to dehumanize migrants, reduce them to labels, illegal aliens, economic burdens. But we have to remember, they're fleeing unimaginable circumstances, often created by the very countries they're trying to reach.
It's not just the physical journey either.
No.
It's the emotional, psychological tool of displacement.
Leaving behind everything you know, your home, your culture, your support system. It's incredibly traumatic.
Oh, how do you even start to rebuild your life after that?
There's this profound sense of loss. That comes with forced migration. Loss of identity, belonging, security.
And even if they reach their destination, they face new challenges.
Exactly.
Discrimination.
Language barriers.
Cultural differences.
Trying to rebuild their lives in a new place that's often not welcoming.
It's a reminder that Migration isn't just a moment in time.
No.
It's a lifelong process
of
adaptation and resilience.
And it's a process that's made even harder by the policies and attitudes of the receiving countries.
We see this in the rise of anti-immigrant sentiment.
The demonization of refugees, tightening border controls, this cycle of fear and exclusion, it just makes the problems worse.
It's almost like we're trying to build walls to keep out the consequences of our own actions.
Exactly.
Instead of addressing the root causes.
We need to shift our perspective.
Okay.
Stop seeing migration as a threat and start seeing it as a symptom of global injustice. Injustices that we're responsible for.
It's time to acknowledge our role in creating the conditions that force people to flee.
So if we acknowledge that the U.S. and other Western powers played a role in these crises, how does that change our responsibility to those seeking refuge?
That's the question I keep coming back to.
This is where it gets personal.
Right.
Because if we're honest, we're all part of this system. Our choices, our votes, even our apathy contributes to these policies.
So knowing what we know, how do we reconcile that with those images of families fleeing for their lives?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
But we can't ignore it.
So how do we move beyond this cycle of fear and blame?
It starts with understanding history.
Okay.
The Cold War era saw a wave of U.S. interventions in Latin America.
Okay.
They said it was to fight communism. But really, it was about securing U.S. interests, preventing the rise of governments that challenged American power.
These interventions had lasting consequences.
They did.
Like Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador.
Yeah.
They're still struggling with poverty,
violence,
political instability.
It's the legacy of that time.
It challenges the American dream narrative.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you consider what's hitting behind that image, we need to understand this history to really grasp migration today.
It's about recognizing that these crises aren't isolated. They're interconnected and stem from global power dynamics.
They've been at play for decades.
Exactly. We need to invest in sustainable development, conflict resolution, creating safe and legal pathways for migration. We need to challenge the narratives that dehumanize migrants and promote understanding, empathy, and compassion.
It's about recognizing we're all interconnected. Our actions have global consequences, and we have a shared responsibility to create a world where everyone can live in dignity and safety.
So what can we do?
Where do we go from here?
It
can feel overwhelming.
It can.
We've uncovered all these forces shaping migration, this human cost.
It's a lot.
So where do we go from here?
Well,
what can we do?
It's easy to feel powerless when you look at these global issues. But honestly, there are things we can do, both individually and collectively. It all starts with a shift in perspective.
Okay, I'm ready. What does that look like?
Instead of seeing migration as this problem to be solved, we need to see it for what it is. A complex human phenomenon with deep historical roots and global implications. We need to move beyond those simple narratives that paint migrants as victims or villains.
So it's about recognizing their agency and resilience.
Absolutely. Migrants are often portrayed as passive receiving aid, but they're incredibly resourceful and determined. They're making difficult choices. Facing unimaginable challenges.
That makes sense. But how do we translate that understanding into action? Because I think a lot of people listening are probably thinking like, okay, this is heavy. But what can I actually do about it?
You're right. It's not enough to just understand. We need to act. And it starts with educating ourselves. We've just scratched the surface. Dive deeper into the specific issues affecting the regions and communities you're interested in. There are so many great organizations, journalists, researchers doing incredible work.
So follow them on social media.
Yes.
Read their articles. Donate to their causes.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. And the more we understand these issues, the better we can challenge those harmful narratives that dehumanize migrants and perpetuate fear and prejudice.
So when we see those narratives in conversation, in the news, we need to push back.
Yes, we can't let those stereotypes go unchecked.
Exactly. Speak up. Share accurate information.
Advocate for more humane perspectives.
Okay.
And don't underestimate your voice.
Yeah.
Even small actions can make a difference.
Okay, so we're educating ourselves.
Yeah.
Challenging those narratives. What else can we do?
Support organizations working on the ground to provide aid, legal assistance.
Yeah.
Advocacy for migrants and refugees.
There are so many groups doing great work.
There are.
And they need our support.
They do.
So volunteer our time.
Donate resources.
Use our skills.
Exactly. And be creative.
Okay.
Organize a fundraiser. Host a film screening.
Okay.
Start conversations in your community.
I like it.
There are so many ways to get involved.
What about on a bigger scale?
Okay.
How do we push for systemic change?
That's important.
Right.
Yeah.
This isn't just about individual actions.
Yeah.
It's about changing policies and systems that are creating these crises.
Exactly.
So how do we do that?
Engage with the political process.
Okay.
Support candidates who champion humane immigration policies. Contact your representatives.
Yeah.
Voice your concerns.
Okay.
Advocate for reforms that address the root causes.
Yeah.
And create safe and legal pathways.
Voting with our values, making our voices heard. That's how we start to shift things.
It can feel daunting.
It can.
But it's crucial.
It is. And remember, change doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It's a long game.
Yeah.
But every conversation, every action, every vote contributes to a larger movement.
For justice and compassion.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our shared humanity.
Right.
Understanding that we're all connected.
And the well-being of one affects us all.
It does.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
I
want to leave you with this. Migration isn't just a political issue or a headline.
Yeah.
It's a human story.
A story of resilience.
Determination.
And the pursuit of a better life.
Let's choose empathy over apathy.
Understanding over judgment.
Action over indifference.
Let's be part of the solution.
Creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to live in dignity and safety.
No matter where they come from.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
We hope it's given you some new insights.
And a desire to act.
Until next time.
Yes.
Keep learning.
Keep questioning.
Keep pushing for a better world.
So here's the thing. We're a small, independent podcast, and we rely on the support of our amazing listeners to keep creating content that's thought-provoking, entertaining, and sometimes even a little bit crazy. If you want to help us keep the conversation going, then click the link in the description to buy us a coffee. It's a small price to pay for the laughs, the tears, and the aha moments we bring to your ears. So what do you say? Will you support us and help us keep the conversation going? Click the link now and let's keep it going.